Hey guys, it's Hufsa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over a build guide for Thursars. This is going to be the 1v1 God build. I call it the dual school character, at least. So if you haven't seen this video type before, you guys voted for it on my channel a couple weeks ago. I did a poll. What would you guys like to see next? Thursar 1v1 God 1. So I've got about 3,000 hours in the game. I've played every single build in the game. I've theory crafted a bunch of weird builds, including like Mounted Mage Thursar. I'm going to be going over the primary attributes. I'm going to be talking about the professions, the action skills. I'm going to give a couple tips, what they're good at, what they're bad at, and then at the end of the video I'm going to go over a tier list and talk about every aspect of the build. So if you're interested in this character, or maybe you don't know if you are, you can scroll to the end, see what the overall rank looks like, and if it's something that you're interested in, come back to the beginning of the video, watch, and I'm going to go through and explain the basics. So let's get started. This is a Thursar, age 30, max height, stout, max stout, has 213 health, stamina is 381, is pretty good. Enough mana for one cleanse, which is really nice. Max out your strength, max out your dex, max out your con. Anything extra, put into psych. I don't think this website that I use has been updated yet, but you might actually have a few more points in psych. It's not going to make any real difference in the build, but you might have a few extra points in psych if you're building it today, because there has been a patch or two that adjusted these different characters, right? So when I'm in Haven, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for raw damage. So you can see I categorize like where you should be putting your points in Haven to kind of like maximize your speed getting in and out, right? Pretty simple. Looks like a very, very solid character for being a foot fighter. It's not the pinnacle, but I'll talk about that here in a second. So action skills, we're going down the list. On the left-hand side, we got aggressive stance, standard for footies, anatomy standard, archery standard, armor training standard. I have a couple different weapons on this build, right? So kind of the design here is what this character is going to do better than any other character in the game is they're the best duelists in the game. If you want to stand around in town and duel your buddies and just get hyper proficient at being a foot fighter and being a duelist with melee, this is the character to do it on. So you'll notice I have swords, I have axes, I have some leftover points in spears, right? You could even drop taming and put even more points in spears or flip-flop these, right? Don't get too hung up on which weapon. This is just so that you can hop into the character and learn what you want to play with. Axes is really good. One-handed axe is one of the best dueling weapons in the game. That's why I have heavy armor training at 100, because you want that so that if you do want to run like a tower shield with this guy, because people will sweep your legs. That's one of the downsides. You're super tall. People will sweep your legs if you're using a smaller shield. So you want to use a tower shield, but you can try out all the different weapons, right? And then you can freely read a weapon book, which takes about a day to read because you're stupid. You're a big dumb Thursar. It takes about a day to read. So you can rotate into other weapons without fear of like being inefficient, right? Let's say you want to drop swords and go into spears. You can read a book. You'll be bleeding sword skill, but you can still use axes. Let's say your buddies want to go fight. You can still use axes. Once you're comfortable with the character, once you're comfortable with the weapon that you really want to commit to, you can drop these points and put them into other things. I'd recommend mounted archery as kind of a go-to. Being able to kill horses is super, super valuable, but really it's a foot fighter build. There's not much out there that you really need that's not in the build. Mounted archery would be great. Potion utilization might be really good if you don't need the weapon skills, right? This also allows you to kind of play into poleaxes and pole swords, things like that. So, get used to the character, see what you really like the most. Swords is kind of the meta right now. It's just super noob friendly. It's just good all around for reasons I won't really get into, right? So this build is a excellent learner character. If you want to learn melee combat, get absolutely proficient at it, and then swap to a real build like an Augmere, this is a good one for you. Some people will be salty, but it's the truth. We'll go into professions, right? So because you use so many different weapons, I have a bunch of weapon crafting here. I have bowery as well. Getting a max strength longbow for yourself can be a little bit difficult, but bows are generally pretty cheap on the auction house. So if you don't want to go into bow crafting, because I rarely suggest it, uh, just fully lean into the weapon crafting. Make this guy your ultimate weapon crafter. Get your stone lore up for flakestone and cuprum. Get your steel lore up. Get your animal stuff up for Incisium, and just make this guy a full-blown weapon crafter. Start getting those Rizar books, right? You can make a good amount of money if you get those Rizar books kind of locked in, right? So let's talk about the tier list. I apologize that the color scheme is a little bit blown out. I'm learning there's a couple errors with OBS and Shadowplay with HDR video, and I got a new monitor, so I'm still figuring it all out, but I didn't want to delay the video any longer. So let's get into it. PvP. Um, PvP. Oh, that's a tough one. You know what? I do this a lot, but I'm gonna come back to that. PvE on this build. So PvE on this build is really like, honestly, like a D. You can't really do much. If you pick up mounted archery, all of a sudden you can do everything outside of dungeons. There's a better build in most situations. You can't go be a main tank. I mean, you can really. Like, this isn't WoW. Like, you can be a main tank, but um, people will question whether or not you can do it just on the simple fact that you're not an Augmere, right? So you can't really fulfill the role of a main tank. You have the highest DPS in the game. So, yeah, highest melee DPS. Yeah, I'll put it in C. It's not like the worst thing in the world. And if you are mounted archer, it gets a lot better. So you have the potential. You're basically average, right? Solo play. Oh man, this is really bad for solo play. You have all the weaknesses of an Augmere accelerated to 10. Really, this is like an F for solo play. If you don't want to leave town and be like a dual god, this is god tier, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you're huge, you're slow, you take a massive amount of magic damage. Mages will just kind of eat you for lunch. If you're all by yourself and a mage doesn't have to worry about managing their mana, because they, a big downside to a mage is they only really have enough mana to kill one player. If they have to kill a horse on top of it, it's exacerbated, right? But killing a Thursar is pretty easy as a mage, right? So you'll struggle against even just another mage. And you're huge, so you're an easy target. You move slow. It's just, people can plink you with arrows from a distance, right? So it's very punishing as a solo player. I wouldn't recommend this if you're brand new to the game and you don't really know what your focus is. If you're trying to learn the game and pick up different skills and kind of get familiar, I would not recommend this character, right? This would be a really good alternate character for maybe your first alternate account if you're getting a second character and you just want a dual character. A lot of people do this. You'll see them, a ton of people in Fab, ungilded, because I don't know why they like to hide their guild, and they'll just duel it up all day long, and that's how they get the most proficient duelists out there, is just guys that will level this character and practice it, right? So 1v1 and duel, I separated. These are now two different things. 1v1 in the real world, I'm going to put into B tier, mostly because mages will kick your ass, and it feels bad, right? In a 1v1, mages will kick your ass. You will dominate pets. So that's something that's interesting, is this build is the hard counter to pets, right? Because you have lifesteal. And a bad tamer will leave a pet on you. while you have lifesteal up. A good tamer will try to pull it away and wait for the buff to fall off, but it's a freaking long buff, right? So this build is one of the only builds in the game that should run towards a Terror Bird, right? So there's some benefits there, right? In melee, you're going to kick ass on 1v1s. You're really, really good, but I'm going to talk about that when I get to dueling. But when it comes to like fighting tamers and stuff like that, oftentimes a tamer is a mage, so you'll struggle there. But the pet itself, you can demolish. You can just lifesteal through almost anything. So, yeah, so it's about a B tier. I don't think it's like amazing, amazing. 1vx. 1vx, I'll put it here. If you're fighting 2 melee, you could totally win. You could totally win. If you're fighting a melee and a mage, it's going to be like hitting your face into a wall, right? It's not going to be fun. Dueling. This is S tier. This is the best class in the game for dueling. Steganthrope is banned in most dueling tournaments because it is so good. Being able to regen a metric fuck ton of your health passively is so good. You also hit harder than any other melee character in the game, right? You have just an insane amount of burst potential, an insane amount of damage potential, an insane amount of sustain, right? In a duel, you've kind of got the quasi rules of no bandaging, no magic, right? In those scenarios, Thursar is a god, literal god, right? So, offense. Let's see, offense. Offense is an A tier. What about S tier? Highest raw damage throughput in the game, melee wise. Just pretty damn good. It's really hard to argue with a Callard Thursar. They just slap, right? Defense. I'll put this in B tier because they can wear heavy armor, but what footy can't, right? They can wear steel, where an Alvarin can't, so they're a little bit better than an Alvarin in that sense. But compared to an Ogmir, they're nothing special, right? They're Steganthrope is good and bad, right? This would probably be A tier if Steganthrope didn't have a downside, but Steganthrope reduces incoming healing. So I'll talk about that when I get to team fights, which is actually coming up next, so I might as well talk about it now. Team fights, honestly, they go down into the D tier. There's a couple reasons. Biggest one is Steganthrope. If you have Steganthrope, it cuts your healing by a lot. You have to be proactive about using your clades to increase incoming healing, which is difficult. It's a high skill cap. You're huge. You're easy to hit for casters. You take a lot of magic damage, and you don't have the best defense, right? So you're just a ghetto version of an Ogmir that is not terrible, right? You can still put in work, but it sometimes feels like you hurt your team more than you help your team, which will be frustrating. What I would recommend and what I've seen used pretty successfully is knowing your position on the battlefield. Your position on the battlefield should be just behind the front line, right? If you have Ogmirs in your team, let them be as far forward as they can. You want to be right behind them, and you want to be the guy that is zoning for your mages. You want to be the guy punishing the Alvarans that overextend. You want to be the guy punishing anybody that gets in through the line to go for your mages. If your mages are asking for peels, you should be right there peeling for your guys. I've seen a lot of success with Thursars doing that. Right, you get like a spear on your Thursar with massive range. You can pretty quickly get to mages as long as you're not overextended and out of position. They have their moments, right? But there's just so many better versions. I would rather have an Alvarin that could dive the backline and get full heals. They take up less action economy. This is like the worst action economy class, right? You just eat all of your healers' attention and time, and you fold to mages pretty easily. You're easy to hit, right? Money generation, really, I'd put it in D tier, mostly because it takes a long time to level up the material component lore that people care about. It takes a long time to get your steel up. It takes a longer time to get tongue steel up. It takes a long time to get things like placoid scales and other things like that leveled up. And then on top of that, getting Rhizar books, right? There's certain weapons like spear. You don't want to use a spear until you have the Rhizar head. The spear, for if you don't know what the Rhizar head does, the Rhizar head on spears basically uh, dramatically increases the slash damage and turns it into a pole sword. But it's a spear, so it saves you 100 primary points. Once you get the Rhizar spearhead, which is really expensive, you can make a lot of money with that. You start getting Rhizar books, and your money goes up, right? But that takes a long time. And if this is your only character, it's going to be a struggle to make money, right? This is not really a class that people play to make a ton of money really quickly. Utility. I'll put this in C tier, right? They have Stick and Throw, which is really cool. They have, I forget the other clade. What is it? It is this clade right here that allows you to turn on and off your percent damage resistance versus magic damage resistance, which is good, right? You have like some utility, but overall, you're just a big meathead that hit real hard, right? You're like, yeah, that's basically it. It's nothing too crazy. Skill cap. Um, let's see. I'll put this kind of in D tier, right? It is difficult to learn your positioning. It's difficult to learn your clade usage and develop the game sense for team fights and stuff like that. It's really easy to learn how to 1v1 and learn how to duel. You just get your reps in town, right? I'm not saying that melee is easy. I'm not saying that dueling is easy because you can find very difficult opponents. What I'm saying is it's really easy to learn how to do that, right? And that's where this build shines. What's difficult is learning how to deal with the handicaps that come with being a Thursar. So I would really like to see buffs for Thursar. I think that it's in a decent spot, but definitely needs a little bit of a boost to be competitive with Ogmir. And the main reason people don't play Ogmir is because they're short, fat, ugly dudes. And this guy is, I mean, like I should add like a aesthetic section because Thursars, like Kalar Thursars, they look fucking awesome in their armor, right? You do mounted combat, even though it's trash. You do mounted combat. You get on an armored horse with a lance and some like arthropod um, mercenary set, and you just roll through town. You look fucking dope, dude. Like the reason people play this a lot is it looks fucking dope. You look fucking cool. Um, Uptime. Let's see. Uptime. When I talk about uptime, I'm talking about how often your build is online. You're getting like actual value from your build, and I say it's actually pretty good. I'd put it in A tier. A lot of people like the first thing I always think about is Stiganthrop. And like the second you take damage, Stiganthrop is doing work, right? You don't have to wait for somebody to heal you. It's just perpetually healing you, which is nice, right? You're getting value from it. You're getting less value if you're using the build I showed where you have multiple weapons. But if you rotate into like Mounted Archer or something like that, you're getting value from your build almost the entire time. So it's really good. Like you're just generally using pretty much everything in your build. Crafting. I talked about that a little bit with money generation, so I'll just put that here as well. And I hate having things overlap, so. God, get out of the D category, Thursar. Holy moly. Uh, Crafting, like I said, getting Rhizar books for your crafting, for crafting weapons is super, super nice. It takes a while, it's expensive, but you do that, and then like all of a sudden this starts going up, right? So it has potential, but just like out the gate, the easily accessible stuff to just try and start making money. It's going to be rough. PvP, um, I put it in C tier, right? It shines in certain spaces, but other than hitting harder than anything, which has its moments, um, that's not enough to carry the build, I don't think. And even though it can hit harder than anything, the difference between the hardest hitting character, being this guy, versus second place and third place is marginal. It's very marginal, right? So even though it's really good on offense, it's the best on offense. It's the best on offense by just like a smidge, right? Overall, I gotta rate this. I put it in B, and I'll put it in B because if somebody shows up in as a Thursar to come do group content or something, I'm not immediately sad by that. Like, I've seen really, really good Thursars, right? You've got guys like Lourdes who are just like super mechanically skilled. They're excellent, and they can get to that level in such a short amount of time. Like, Clean and Lourdes are both really, really good, and they both play Thursars, and those are their only characters. And it's because they can put the reps in, and duels last longer, and they get a better sense of what it means to get good in melee combat faster because they get those reps in really, really fast, right? So one of the big benefits is you can learn the melee really, really well on this character, right? So um, that's going to cover it for the guide. Once again, my name is Hafsa. Thanks for watching.